everybody, and welcome to my sewing room. If you haven't been here before, my name is Rosemary, and I do a lot of different kinds of crafts and quilting and sewing. You can see from behind me I'm really into dolls, and I make dolls of polymer clay and of cloth. And on this YouTube channel, I try and do a lot of different techniques. I sew a lot on the Brother sewing machine, and you'll see me with my Brother machine, but I do a lot of other things too as well. And last week what we did was we actually made this little table runner that, I'm going to move some of this stuff out of the way here, that has a Halloween theme, even though we're at the end of June. It's never too early to start sewing for Halloween and Christmas. So I made this little table runner, and I did some embroidery on it and some quilting using my Still Air sewing machine. But one of the things I wanted to show you in this one is Brother has a brand new walking foot, and it's called the dynamic walking foot. And one of the things I like about it is it has an extra feed dog right here in the middle. And we'll move over to the sewing machine in a minute, and I'll show you a little bit better close-up of it and how to sew on it. But I wanted you to be able to see it. If you've never used a walking foot before, they're absolutely fabulous if you're trying to keep your layers together. Like, for instance, if you're sewing your batting and the bottom and the top of your quilt and sewing across that, you don't want everything to shift, so you use a walking foot. But you can also use it to match your plaids, match your stripes, sew on a long piece of curtain. Some people just use it for difficult fabrics like velvets and that sort of thing that keeps things from moving. And this third little feed dog that's down here on the bottom is going to make so much difference. And one of the things that's really nice about this is it comes, as you can see, it doesn't have the foot on it, so the foot snaps on and off, and all I have to do is just push on it here and snap a new foot on it. And it comes with 2 feet, it comes with the regular foot, and it comes with a really wide open toe one that you can see where you're going with. So that's a nice feature with this one. One of the things about this one, and I've been doing a little bit of research, I've seen a few different things that people are saying. It does only have a 7mm opening, and it is only a low shank walking foot. I have a Brother 2500D that has a low shank on it, so it'll work really good on that. And yet at the same time, I saw another video where somebody was saying to go ahead and use it on your big embroidery machines that have a 9mm and high shank, and just use the adapter, because that little middle feed dog is going to help you walk across your fabric and do some of your decorative stitching, which sometimes the great big huge move it foot doesn't work very good with the decorative stitching. So I'm not sure, to be absolutely honest with you, which is the right answer, but I do know that it works really good on the 7mm low shank machines, which is what I have. And I've had a walking foot in the past that came with my machine, and it works okay, but this one works so much better. So talk. Anyway, let's get over to my sewing machine. We're going to move the camera a little bit closer so you can see what I'm doing. We're going to put some binding on this little table runner. So let's get over there. Okay, here's my walking foot like I was just showing you a minute ago. And what I find is really different about it is a lot of them are a white plastic, and this is metal. So it looks like it's going to be a little bit more durable. And on the bottom here, let me see if I can point this out to you. On the bottom here, there is a third feed dog. So on your sewing machine, the part that moves your fabric through is the feed dogs that are right here. And then these are also feed dogs, and they match the feed dogs on your machine like this, and they grip your fabric and pull it through. So it does a really nice job. And this center feed dog is going to also help a whole lot with feeding your fabric through, and it's also going to help do with some of the decorative stitches. And then I'm going to take this foot and snap it on, and it just snaps on by just lining it up with these pegs. One here and one here. And it just snaps on like that. Okay, so if you've never put a walking foot on your machine before, what we're going to do is we're going to take it. I'm going to see if I can get a little more light on the subject here. We're going to take it from the behind, and let me see if I can't move this camera a little bit closer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the walking foot and put it on from behind like this. And see this little piece right here that kind of looks like a little fork that goes up and down? That piece has to go over the needle screw. So as we bring it in from behind, we need to lift that piece up and put it over the needle screw. And then this part needs to go here. And sometimes that takes a little bit of coordination to get it in there. And then we're going to tighten it. So now that it's on there and I put it down, as I turn my flywheel and the needle goes up and down, it actually walks across my fabric, which is why most people call it a walking foot or an even feed foot. Okay, so I've got a piece of scrap white fabric with a little bit of batting under it, and I put some pretty bright green thread in my machine so you can see what I'm doing here. And I'm just going to sew with my walking foot. And every time the needle comes down, this little fork thing that we put over the needle screw lifts the feed dogs, and then they go back down again. And so that they're moving the fabric evenly, so that as I go across my fabric and I've got all these layers, when I get to the other end of the fabric, nothing is shifted. Everything is moved evenly. The top and the bottom isn't moving at a faster rate. So I end up with a nice straight stitch that's not puckered. And it works really good with a lot of different kinds of fabrics. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to reset this up and I'm going to start putting my binding on. Okay, so here's my quilt, and this is the binding that I've cut for it, and it matches the back of the quilt. And I've cut it at 2 inches across, and I'm going to fold it in half like this. And I'm going to put that under my walking foot. And any of you who've watched me before know that I do not profess to be an expert quilter. I have a lot of fun with quilting and I do the best that I can, but there might be people who are expert quilters who watch me do this go, that's not right, she's not doing that right. So we'll just see how it goes. But anyway, what you do is you put your walking foot right on the through all these layers, the folded over 2-inch binding and your quilt, and you just start to sew. And I usually try and line up the edge, the opening part where the actual feed dog goes with the edge of my quilt, and that way I get a pretty good seam allowance that's not too far in, and it gives me some room. Now you'll notice I'm sewing this on the top of my table runner because I flip it around to the back and hand sew it. I always like it better hand sewn. So I'm going to sew this to the edge, and it should move it nice and evenly to the edge. And then when I get about 1/4 of an inch away, I turn it just a little bit there and I sew to the edge like that. And then I'm going to cut it. Now, I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to try and do this in a way that people can see what I'm doing. I'm going to take this and I'm going to fold it at an angle here. So kind of what it's doing is I got a straight line here and a straight line here. So it goes across like that, and then I'm going to take it and fold it back on itself like this. So now I've just folded it over, and now I'm going to flip the whole thing around. Okay, sometimes it's harder to flip it around with the camera and the sewing machine and all the other stuff, but I flipped it around, and now I'm going to sew the edge again. And I'm going to keep doing that on every single corner until I come back to where I started. And then when I get back to where I started, I'm going to show you how I finish that off. Okay, so now I've sewn all the way around my table runner, and I've got to the end here. I've got these two pieces here, and I've got a space in between right here. So the way I finish this up is I fold this part down like this, and then I take this part and I fold it like this. And I want to leave probably about 1/4 of an inch between the two here. Then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut. I'm left-handed, so this is crazy. I'm going to cut this one right here. And then I'm going to take this piece here and open it up and lay it on this piece here. And I'm going to cut here. So now I've got two pieces here, and I'm going to take them and I'm going to just twist them a little bit like this and put them right sides together. Sometimes when I do this, I discover I sew just a little bit too far here, and I got to rip it out so that I've got some room to move this a little bit so I can see what the heck I'm doing. But anyway, I'm going to take them and I'm going to twist them and I'm going to put them right sides together like this, and I'm going to stitch a slant waist stitch right there. So this is always a little tricky for me, getting it in here, opening this up and sewing and laying this flat. But let me see if I can do it. I'll put it right there like that. It's hard enough to do it when you're not trying to keep your hand out of the way of the camera. And then I'm going to turn this, and I'm going to cut this little corner off like that. And then this should just fold straight down and fit in here. And that really does work. I mean, I can see right here that I've got just a little pucker right here, was just a little bit too big, probably because the way I sewed it together, but it really does work. And then you can just stitch from here to where the other end is, and you're all finished. Okay, I'm back, and I moved over here to my counter, and I'll tell you, I've had people say I'm absolutely crazy because I do this by hand, but I'll be honest with you, I don't like to see stitches on this side. When you take it to your sewing machine, flip it around and stitch it, you can almost never get it exactly in the same spot, so you don't see stitching on the other side. In the same way, when you're trying to put biased tape around the edge of a pot holder or something, I don't want to see my crooked lines as I'm sewing down here, and then it goes in here, and then some of it's over here, and it doesn't look right. So I just as soon do it by hand and be happy with my results. So this is the back of my quilt, and I've taken this binding that I've put on here, and I'm going to flip it around to this side. And I can pin it in place if I want to. I've used those Wonder Clips. They're really good. And I'm doing this with green thread because I want to be able to see it a little bit better. I could have done black. That probably would have looked a lot better. But I'm going to put my needle in here like this to hide my knot, and flip it around like this. And do you remember when I was showing you how to do a ladder stitch for sewing a doll clothes? It works pretty much the same way. I'm going to put my needle parallel to the fold like this. And then I'm going to take my needle and run it parallel in the quilt. And then I'm going to come straight across, and I'm going to put it in the fold. And I just keep going back and forth like that. And I'm sure there's other stitches that work really good to do this. I don't want to whip stitch. I don't want to see that stitching. I want it when I pull on it. I want to tug it, and I want all those stitches to go inside the stitching. See, I can't see any of that green thread at all because I pulled on it, and it's not in there. And it takes a little bit of time and patience, but you will get that completely turned to the other side, and then you'll have a finished table runner or quilt or whatever it is you're working on. So I'm going to continue to work on this tonight, and then tomorrow I'll come back and I'll show you what this looks like all finished, and we'll go from there. Okay, so new day. I went into my room last night and I finished sewing the binding on this, and I think it came out pretty good. I'm very happy with it. I do have to make a small little confession. Yesterday when I was doing the really close-up work on my binding, I did notice in the video that you can see all the kind of little knots and stuff on the back of this table runner. Unfortunately, because I did this on the Solaire, I should have probably done the front and the back in orange, or the front and the back in black, and turned off the cutter, because it stops and it cuts the thread a whole lot and makes little knots. So I do like to do all my quilting on my Solaire sewing machine, but sometimes it does kind of look a little messy on the back. This is a table runner, so it's not that important to me. No one's going to actually see the back of it, but that's just a few little tips on how to make it so it doesn't look quite so messy. The front looks absolutely fabulous, and I glued some little buttons on it, and I had a lot of fun with it. If you want to see how I made this with the PE Design software and my Solaire sewing machine, go back to the last video and you'll see how I made this. Otherwise, I hope you like seeing some of the stuff you can do with a walking foot and how to put on binding. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do in my next video. I've been really thinking about maybe making a little blouse, or well, let me think about it and see what we're going to do. But I hope you really like these videos and you're learning a little bit about some sewing techniques and some of the feet that are available to you, and how absolutely fabulous some of these new Brothers sewing machines are. Like and subscribe, watch some of the other videos, make some comments, and we see you next time. Bye.